She says, I know a ton of women who are calm, very kind, and even-keeled people, and their partner is very angry with lots of outbursts, which makes it hard to have any kind of healthy or normal relationship. It seems like a lot of men have trouble expressing any emotions other than anger, and therefore do not provide a safe environment for their woman, who just wants safety so that she can be in her feminine and they can be calm and happy. What can men do to fix this within themselves? Is therapy the only option? My husband saw a therapist for this a couple years ago, and it wasn't really that helpful. It was more reactive, helping him to stay calm when he was feeling angry, rather than getting to the root of why he is so angry and destructive about almost anything and everything. I can only work on myself, but it will not prevent the anger about literally everything until he does the work to heal himself. Thank you. You want to kick this one off? I think this is definitely one that, hearing from a man directly would be helpful for this woman, because I definitely have thoughts, but anger isn't something that I've felt a lot in my life.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I can't speak to that.
And candidly, for me, I have I was when I played sports, I would get so angry. I would get technical fouls all the time and tell refs to F off, which didn't work very well at a Christian school. My household, as much love as there was in it, there was a lot of hostility at times. And as a teenager, my hormones were raging, and I would yell and
it was very strict
scream,
too,
and
so you were just completely out of control.
Video game goes wrong, you throw the remote. That happened once or twice, and screaming matches with my parents and stuff like that. And then into my adult life, into my 20s for sure. And for me, it always came from a place of fear of failure or incompetency. And it was because I had not gone through a proper maturation process as a male, as a man. Our culture lacks rite of passage. And so much of that rite of passage is facing fear and overcoming fear to some degree. And that the process of overcoming just anchors in a level of maturity and fulfillment that you can ride the wave on into your adult life pretty hard. And in the modern culture, we don't have that for men at all. It's a huge, huge problem. And so that's kind of the first point, is just that, dude, I totally know. I totally get it. Two, I think it's also weirdly a good sign. We have a deterioration of masculinity at large in our world. I'm not saying it's a good sign in the sense that it's a good habit to have as an adult. You're way past your expiration date. But it's a good sign in the sense that there's a level of masculinity deep down there that just needs to be catalyzed into something else. We are in a world of feminization, and men aren't even experiencing anger and aggression and passion, because this is it's distorted passion and purpose and direction. And if you're numbed and there's nothing there, that's even further down the line. And so I think the point of the anger, the point that I'm trying to make here with the anger, is that I think there's still possibility. It's a lot harder when that's even gone. And so first for me is why the anger? And I think I'm not a freaking psychologist, and I'm not like a men's work coach or anything, but trying to marry, what Jordan Peterson, the psychologist, would say, which is more of a, black and white psychology perspective, versus like John Wineland, which is like sacred masculinity and conscious relationship work. There's a few things that come to mind as to why this individual might be angry, in addition to the fact that I think that in most cases there's a lack of this proper passage through hardship and challenge and the development of an ability to overcome hard things. And so without that lesson being learned, without that being wired into your system, you just throw a tantrum. And you're a high chair tyrant is the archetype, which is basically a prince who's never matured and has never had to work for anything, and instead gets pissy from their high chair and yells at people, instead of going into the lion's den and figuring out how to develop the fucking meat to get out of there. So a couple of the reasons, I think, a sense of injustice and powerlessness. This happens with men in the world that we live in their jobs, bosses that suck, they can't get a job, or they're maybe super low on the totem pole. They feel powerless. It feels unjust. I have every right to be, making this much, doing these types of things, and I don't get a chance to. I have to work this job for the money in order to pay for my life or my kids or my wife or whatever.
You definitely experienced that early on in your career. There was some anger that was rooted to, I feel out of control, and I'm at the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah, I understand. I appreciate and respect hierarchy, but for me, it was when there were shitty people who were lazy telling me what to do, and I was busting my ass, and I was making smarter decisions. So I totally get that. Lack of purpose and direction. This is just a huge theme in whatever space, but like men are purpose-driven. Masculinity is purpose-driven, direction-oriented. And so lacking a clear purpose or direction in life brings on this feeling of meaninglessness. And that can result in emotional turmoil, and that can manifest in anger. It's easier. And why do you guys get triggered so easily? If they don't have a purpose or direction, if they have lacked this feeling of meaning, they're going to be subconsciously looking for any reason to blame instead of themselves. So when something triggers them, like their partner or even their kids or something in their life, that all of that built up content for what has happened and the lack of meaning that they have just gets funneled into that freaking thing or that purpose or that person. And so I think that a lot of times if you've got your eye on a prize, you're less impacted by little inconveniences because you can take it because you're so damn sturdy. What do you do with that? If any of this resonates, and you at least know a little bit as to where this comes from, what do you actually do with that? I think that, well, I guess I'll say one more point, and this is more of like the John Wineland space, but an inability to be vulnerable and experience emotions because of the programming that men went through, especially older men, maybe millennials and above, like be tough, don't cry, don't be vulnerable, don't express the way that you're feeling. That is impossible to walk through life without. Otherwise, it will manifest into these distorted versions of anger. And so, like, if you haven't cried about things that make you emotional and you just bury it, it's going to fester into something aggressive and scary.
Yeah, I think of just a quick interjection here. I can't remember where I heard this from, but it was a Jordan Peterson type character or discussion where he talked about the reason why men are so angry is because they are taught that they can't be afraid.
Right.
So then that gets warped into anger. Similar to like, I hate being scared by people, like jumping out and scaring me. And I have literally told you, like, if you scare me, I'm going to swing. And it's not because, oh my God, I'm mad at you.
Yeah.
It's because I'm scared. And my gut reaction is to get angry when something like that scares me. And it's probably for me, it's a defense mechanism, like when you feel like you're, threatened. And that's, I think, the same thing deep down. It's a human experience. When you feel threatened, you can either be scared and vulnerable, or you can, react and defend yourself.
When Mimi's knee pops out every now and then, and it scares the shit out of me, and it's very painful for you, I feel angry. I want to get angry at something.
Yeah.
And it's so funny how that's the programming is like, what can I get mad at?
Yeah. And so I think just understanding that bit and from a feminine perspective, seeing it as he might not be angry in this moment. He might actually be like scared of something.
Scared, ashamed.
Yeah.
In a vulnerability deficit. Yeah. All of those things. But it's his responsibility to take ownership.
Totally.
And that's where I'm at now. And just to rapid fire, what do you do? How do you do this without therapy? Which, depends on the therapist, really.
Right.
And if you're working with somebody like John Wineland, I'd be pretty confident in your ability to move through this. If you're working with, betterhelp.com, where random person spin the wheel of life and get some rando, I don't know. No offense to anybody who's working on that space. And I know people who've had a lot of success there. I'm just saying, like, dude, I don't know. So what can you do? You can start taking responsibility for the areas in your life that you feel are unsatisfactory. And that can be your career, that can be your relationships, or your personal habits. Follow that up with making meaningful goals in those spaces. Mm-hmm. Here's the kind of work that I want to do, put a timeline on it. Here's how much I want to make, put a timeline on it. Here's the health goals that I have, put a timeline on it and an action plan, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the improvements that I want to make in my relationship, and then give yourself a timeline. Engage in physical exercise. It's free, it's available, and it is scientifically proven to make you feel way better. Mm-hmm. You're charged up about something, go throw some heavy weight around. You'll feel better. Guarantee it.
Do some deadlifts.
Work on your communication skills. So much of the frustration that men feel is an inability through their vocabulary to explain the things that they're feeling. So they just go, fuck you. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying, I'm exhausted and I'm tired and what's going on in my body is a chemical combustion of lack of sleep and not making enough money. And so just read a little bit. Read John Wineland's From the Core. Read David Deda's Way of the Superior Man. Read the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. Read The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and you'll have yourself a wide array of vocab to start placing on the feelings that you're feeling instead of fuck you. Mm-hmm. Cultivate emotional intimacy. Where do you feel safe enough to share what you're feeling without getting charged up? I hope it's your relationship, but if not, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's yourself.
Maybe it's a men's group.
Totally. That's a great call.
I think that is... in this case, I don't think it would be valuable for this man if he were to go back to therapy of some kind. I don't think it would be beneficial for him to work with a woman.
No, I think you're right.
I think that in this case, you need iron sharpening iron. Yeah. You need someone that understands. You need someone who's probably been there many times and figured out how to put your thumb on it and to alchemize it and to turn it into something that can be productive. Because I think when I hear that a man is angry, I hear that he has a lot of passion and a lot of energy. And those are two great things, but it can be alchemized towards anger or it can be alchemized towards, creating something.
That's a great point. And I think that talk therapy has its place, but for some guys, like I'm a talker, I probably wouldn't mind it. But some guys don't really want to talk, or maybe they don't want to talk yet. And they might need to go out into the woods, go for a big hike, be around other men, masculine practices like in men's work. Ben Goreski, who we've had on the podcast, is a big time men's work guy. Mike Salemi, who we've had on the podcast, he takes people out into the wilderness, and you're doing breath work, and you're doing physical activity, and you're exerting yourself, and then you're coming together with men to, if the space and the setting is right, talk. Those types of settings are incredible. Jared Picard, who we just recently had on the podcast, Be Here. He's got a group called Be Here Man. They do a once or twice monthly call where they really connect on a really deep masculine level. Jared Picard, his brother Jason, who's been on the podcast multiple times, doesn't have a men's group, but the Abundance Archetype is a community that I participated in for a year that's very much centered around balanced masculinity in a lot of ways. Paul Chek's community, Spirit Gym, going to a Paul Chek workshop up at his house, you'll be exposed to balanced masculine men. Mm-hmm. So finding yourself a community, and even if it's just one or two people in your life that who is a balanced, sound man who doesn't have anger outbursts. Yeah. Just have a conversation with them, spend a little bit more time with them. Yeah. And the last thing I would say, this is very much a John Wineland thing, but masculinity is not about being like a sword and a warrior as much as it is about having the capacity to hold space and to be a container. Life is chaotic. Your relationships are crazy sometimes. If you're a family and you're a father, you've got chaos. Mm-hmm. Your role is not to just come in there and discipline the shit out of everybody and yell at everybody, and that's not how you are defined as a man. It's about holding the space of that chaos, being the container, ensuring that even though things are crazy, it's going to be safe, and choosing with precision when and where to set boundaries. And that's not just a bull walking into a china shop. I use the analogy a lot of times. Men tend to think that masculinity is like being a blacksmith, where you're sharpening iron to become swords. And it's actually a lot more of the artist that is like a potter with clay, and you're using your hands to support and contain the art itself, to allow it to function and manifest in a way that is with freedom. It's less about just beating the shit out of something until it's sharp enough to be effective. So, yeah, that's kind of a dump of things that come to mind for me on this question.
I think to wrap this up from me, I would say it sounds like he is interested, because he's already been to therapy before. So he is interested to some degree in changing, in evolving, in becoming better, right? If she was saying he won't even admit that he has a problem, that's a different story. But it sounds like he's willing to work on this. I think the best thing for a man who has excess anger is not to go to talk therapy and work with a random therapist.
Right.
I think it would be beneficial for this guy to get in a circle of men, whether that's 5, 6, 10 men that can say like, dude, I know how you feel. And your woman deserves more from you.
Yeah.
Like, she deserves to feel safe in her home.
Right.
Currently, she doesn't. And I can tell you, as a woman, any man that is angry around you, it is so unnerving. We are taught that is a threat to your, like, you could kill me with one hand. So being around that, like an angry man, is so terrifying for a woman. So, like, she deserves more. She deserves more from you. And, you know, she also has to take ownership for her part, because if she's communicating or doing things that she know pisses you off, and she's like, this is your deal, I'm just doing me, you need to figure this out. It's a partnership. You can figure it out together. But if I were to advise this guy, I would say get into a men's circle. See that men's work is not fluffy, airy-fairy, head up in the clouds, talk therapy.
Right.
It is masculine. Sure. Like, it's literally chest pounding kind of stuff. And I think that we have a plethora of men in our circle that could help this guy in some way, shape, or form, whether that's through books or online groups or physically being in a men's group. So I'll put these names in the show notes. Ben Goreski, Mike Salemi, John Wineland, and Jared Picard and Jason Picard would be wonderful resources for this guy.
Thank you so much for listening.
If you enjoyed that, check out right over here for some more fun clips.
Oh, and you're going to want to subscribe.
Bye.